Hi, and welcome to this installment of Bergeron Briefs. If you haven't seen this show before, my name is Arthur Bergeron. I'm an attorney. I do nothing but elder law. I work at a firm called Myrick O'Connell. There are 68 of us, which means that I get to do this because those other people all do other stuff. And I do these shows to kind of supplement the presentations I do at the Saltmarsh, where I try to focus on legal issues. And this is really to give you a sense, if you don't know them already, of the people that you should know if you're a senior in the community, and of the programs that you should be aware of. And a person that you probably already know because he's been here forever, but he's here today, is Peter MacKay. And thank you very much for coming on.
My pleasure.
And I know that, we were talking last week, and I said, I know that you've been doing what you're doing now for a long time. And I remember a few years ago, you're saying, I think I'm tired, about another year, right? And I talked to somebody recently, our mutual friend Kevin Marshall in the police department, and he said, yeah, Peter's saying he's probably got another year. So,
where does the true answer lie?
So could you start by just kind of talking about? So, did you end up here? Are you a Washashire? Are you a local?
Technically, I'm a Washashire. My folks were born and raised here, and I would come here summers. So, needless to say, growing up in the Bronx versus summering in Nantucket is quite a dichotomy.
Yeah.
And needless to say, I would choose Nantucket.
Yeah.
As a kid, I had no choice. Fast forward, I met my lovely wife of 36 years on Nantucket here at the Finest, which was what it was known before it became a Stop and Shop. And she is a nurse, and she wanted to prove herself. So she worked at Mass General, and I worked at Department of Social Services in the mainland. But we'd come down here every weekend.
Every weekend?
Every weekend. One weekend, she turns to me and she says, I don't want to go. And I went, yes. And as it turns out, that was the turning point. The funny part of it was she actually had worked in the hospital in the 70s. She went to the director of nursing. The director of nurses said, Allison, you've worked here before. You've got the degree. You got the job. It took about 15 seconds.
That's all good.
But she said, before you go, I hear you have a husband who has an MSW, which is a Master's in Social Work. They talk. I finish a round of golf I had with my brother who's already living here. I come back from the golf. I say, how you doing, kid? Did you get the job? She says, yeah, I got you one too. Honest to God.
And how long ago was that?
That was just under 33 years ago. The hospital had no social work department, and I just walked in at the right place at the right time.
And you became the department.
And I have been the department since its inception.
That's great.
Which is great. I mean, doing what I love to do, where I love to be, I'm very blessed.
I know for so many of the folks that I've talked to, when I bump into different folks in the community about issues involving seniors, because primarily I always tell people, my median client age is 74.
Yeah.
I love it because these people still think I'm young. This is all good, right? But whenever I talk about folks, if there's an issue, they'll always say, "Oh, did you talk to Peter MacKay about that? Oh, did you talk to Peter MacKay about that?" And we were joking earlier in the show that to some extent your position has kind of evolved into kind of the island's social worker.
In many respects, it has, yeah. When I first started, obviously, it was just me.
Yeah.
And now the department has, I think my department has 7 full-time people, 10 on-call interpreters. I just dropped 5 on-call social workers.
Yeah.
But, I have become the community social worker in many respects. And I like it because it needs to be done. And I sometimes humorously blame my father as a minister, for installing ethics and morals, but you got to do the right thing. And I wouldn't be in this profession if I didn't want to do the right thing and help people out.
Right. None of my friends went to social work because they were just looking, what a glamorous profession.
Yeah,
what a big
glamorous
money, right? Yeah.
No, my biggest pay is when I'm able to help somebody and they say, thank you so much, you made such a difference. I mean, in a small community, you get that a lot. And let's face it, that's a luxury.
It's a real luxury.
You don't get that in the urban environment too much. You see them, you don't see them again. Here, you do.
That's right.
And
you see their family.
I see their family,
and you kind of know everybody.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I never thought I'd appreciate working with kids in my earlier years. The elderly was an unknown entity.
Yep.
And after I started work at the hospital, started obviously working.
It's because you weren't 60 yet.
I wasn't 60. I was barely 30 at that point in time.
Right.
But I had to grow a beard to look older, speak slower. So people aren't going, what did you say?
You're now speaking slower than
this
you
is
used
slower.
to speak?
Oh, yeah. This is the slow version.
Wow,
and actually, when I'm with the elderly, I do slow it down even more.
Yeah.
But see that? You're not elderly there, Arthur. I'm not slowing down for you. So, but I found
I should tell people who are watching this show that you could replay it on in the old days you could put it on slow.
Slow,
yeah. Just going to take it right.
Take it down to 33 and a third.
Right.
I found working with the elderly so rewarding. I mean, you get them engaged in talking about the past history. I mean, I remember one guy telling me about a fighter pilot in World War II. I was fascinated. and enthralled. And again, the appreciation from them for what seemed nominal on my part was overwhelming. And how can that not be rewarding?
Right.
So
right. And there's all that history there, and folks who, in many cases, they've got some time.
Yeah.
You know, they've got some time.
Nothing but.
Right.
And,
right.
And
they can actually.
The difference
talk
between the
about stuff.
doctors and nurses and myself is I can give them the time. And that just the fact, giving them time, let them talk. There's no rush. Tell me about this story. You forgot something? No problem. Take your time.
Right. That's a really interesting point because they're not kind of on the clock. They're not trying to finish the visit and they're kind of documenting it so you can send it into Medicare or the insurance company or whatever.
And give them the respect they deserve.
Yeah.
As I age, I was telling you earlier, I hit 60, believe it or not, last year, that you appreciate the wisdom and such and the respect that somebody's earned just to get to that point. And sometimes,
by the way, so I'm just going to I'm going to make you do your story now. Do your 60-year-old story.
Oh, okay.
It's a great story.
My wife,
because you get older and you're like, nothing good about this.
No,
But
that's true.
sometimes there is. So
every now and then there's a benefit. So my wife and I were vacationing in the Bahamas earlier this year, and we were getting a little low on cash before we were going. So I stopped at an ATM and got some cash, but it was all Bahamian money. I said, I don't want $200 in Bahamian money. So I asked the teller, can I just exchange this in the bank there? She said, sure, just get online. I looked at the line. It was like 25 people. I said, oh, geez. I looked over to the left, and there was a line of one person. I looked above that one, and there was a sign that said, for those 60 and over. I went, oh, yeah.
I'm in. I'm in. This is a big deal.
It was a perk.
It's a big deal. Right. So now, the older you get, the more you can kind of identify with these folks.
Yeah.
So can you just talk about that a little bit? Because once again, you've been doing this for over 30 years here on the island. Can you talk about kind of the evolution of what I'll call the care system or the safety net or whatever you want to call it as it relates to older folks and how you see it and how it kind of works now and what in your own opinion, just what is your sense of kind of what's working, what's missing, you know, and because as you look and because, you know, at some point you actually will retire. As you kind of pass the mantle, like where can you imagine it going? Right. I mean, you have a new hospital under construction.
New hospital under construction.
I always hear the conversations regarding our island home. Many conversations, right?
That's obviously a big topic.
I have to say that I was delighted to see that Sherburne Commons became local again. You know, I think that's a wonderful thing. This notion of having a kind of a system of the places where if you just can't be at home, if it's not safe to be at home, right? That there are some nice, clear alternatives that aren't big institutional, you know. So what is your sense?
My sense of Nantucket and the elderly is it's a good place to be. Part of it's just being small, but part of it's the people that work here. I mean, I'll name somebody, not to embarrass her, but Sherry Hunt, who runs Elder Services, does a marvelous job. I mean, she's putting heart and soul, just bends over backwards. And there are many others as well who do the same. But there's a compassion and a passion that a lot of the people working here have. Yeah. Now, whether that's unique just because we get to know these people or not, or whether it's unique to the individuals themselves, I can't say. But I can say it's a good place. Not that it's without its, problems and issues and pitfalls. Yeah. But for the most part.
And I think to some extent, by the way, I see it from coming over here, and I also go to the other island. I'll have to mention that.
Don't mention that.
Which isn't in the Bahamas, you know. And people think, and I do think that there is this kind of this unique combination of a set of players who are really engaged, and also a sense of reality that you're on the island and you're kind of like you're in this together. Because if you're not, you're flying off the right
on your own.
And so people just get used to kind of taking care of each other because you really kind of have to.
And they depend on certain individuals to help them through the issues. Let's face it, from one of the biggest issues, and probably one of the things I'm best known for, is the infamous Medicare Part D program, the prescription drug program for the seniors. Okay, let's face it.
Which no one can figure out.
No one can figure out.
I tried figuring it out. I just turned 66. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm like, what?
We'll set up a time.
What do these forms mean?
It's basically, it was Medicare opening up the private market to the prescription drugs to the private market, the private for-profit market. For-profit, they're out there to make a profit. They're not out there to make Arthur Bergeron's life better. They're out there to make a profit. So you have to navigate a pothole-ridden system to be able to pick plans wisely. And why I open my doors, as most everybody on the island knows, for that open enrollment period from October 15th through December 7th.
Which is coming right up.
Coming right around the corner again.
Because it happens every year, right?
Every year.
You got to keep looking at it because everything changes. The game changes every year.
The plans change. What I've noticed after 10 years, because the Medicare Part D program came about in 2006.
Wow, that's hard to believe.
It's a long time. Yeah. They employ one of the oldest tricks in the book, nationwide, not just Nantucket, the bait and switch. They'll have a good plan one year, And Peter, should I enroll? Absolutely. But I want to see you during the open enrollment period because I can almost guarantee that plan's going to pull the switch next year when you're locked in.
Right, and something's going to, and I remember talking to folks about this, saying, even from the little that I know, and then I've heard from pharmacists and stuff, the name of the game is not which is the cheapest plan.
No.
The question is which plan has your drugs on it, right?
Yep.
At the cheapest rate.
As I've said to many people, it's all about the contracts. Every one of those drug plans has a contract with every one of the pharmaceutical companies. You want the one with a good contract, ergo good coverage, but you're not going to know that just from the literature that's put out. Right. You got to go through the Medicare program to determine that. So anyway, not to go into great detail because my doors will be open again, and I will continue to do that. And it sort of falls into that old Alan Alda movie, same time next year. I look forward to seeing a lot of the same people there. We'll see what we can save next year. People come in going, how much are we going to save this year?
Oh, that's great.
That's fun.
That's great.
So, but part of it is...
And that's very interesting because in so many of the communities where I work, that role is typically a volunteer shine counselor.
And we have them here too, so they're pitching and doing some as well. I don't know their numbers.
Yeah.
I do know that we see in the hospital probably anywhere from 250 to 300 seniors every open enrollment period.
That's a huge number.
And that's just on top of the regular workload. But again, I go back to blame my father. It's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do.
Last open enrollment period, there was one guy that if he didn't change plans, he would have spent $4,100 more. Because drugs were just dropped from his formulary. So the penalty is severe.
From his formulary. That's the list. The list of the drugs that you can get through that plan.
Exactly. So we just switched him to another plan. You make no allegiances, and he has the same coverage. But you got to switch. So you got to look at it. So
that's an important part.
That's an important part. But part of it comes from the concept of, go back to the respect again. I am a fierce advocate for everyone, but the seniors in particular, who have a harder time, in general, speaking for themselves. Rights of self-determination. You know about that very well.
Right.
Extremely important. As we all age, the last thing we're going to hold on to is the ability to say what happens to ourselves, make decisions for ourselves.
Absolutely.
And sometimes people will say, oh, Mr. Smith, he's not with it. Well, they weren't looking at him, and in fairness to me, talking slower, giving him the opportunity to prove he understands what you're saying. Right. Instead of dismissively saying while you're talking to him doing something else that he's not paying, he doesn't know. No. Give him the opportunity because last I checked, you're still competent until proven otherwise.
That's right. And the fact that you're going a little slower, right, doesn't mean that you still can't make decisions.
Right. I use this example many times. If physician says, Mr. MacKay, you can't go home without 24-hour care because you're going to fall. I said, well, I realize I may fall, and I realize the consequences may be a broken hip or whatever, but I'm willing to take those chances. He cannot dictate to me.
Right.
Peter MacKay, too, says, I'm not going to fall. Well, now I'm questioning capacity because I may not understand. But that's an important point that even in the medical community, families don't grasp that. And therefore, I find myself oftentimes in the role of advocating for patients, sometimes even against physicians.
Yeah.
Not often.
Yeah.
But with family members say, well, mom's got to go to the island home. Mom doesn't want to go to the island home. Okay, but she doesn't understand. Yes, she does.
Yes, she does.
And those are some of the hardest conversations. But
those
it also
some of the hardest.
It empowers me the passion to speak up, not in an argumentative way, hopefully a very workable way where we're all on the same page.
So, do you find yourself talking with seniors and their families about this whole issue around not only having a healthcare proxy, but having a plan, and figuring out kind of what your plan is?
Talking to your healthcare proxy. Just don't assign your son or your daughter or your wife. And
just don't say they're doing right, because I keep telling people,
I know.
You don't want to, just going to guilt them out. They're going to feel terrible. Or if there are several children and someone's got to be the proxy, they still got to talk to all the other kids. They want
them all on the same page.
And you want everybody to know, this is what mom wanted.
Right.
This is what dad wanted. This isn't what I'm guessing they wanted.
Even though Junior may not agree, it's still mom's decision. This is what mom wants. And mom gets to do that. I remember another example back when I started. I was fresh off the block, 2 years into the social work, and I knew all the answers. And my grandmother, who since passed away, said to me that, but I don't want to do it anymore. I want to go to the island home. I said, no. I can make sure you're okay. I don't want to. I want to be taken care of. And it dawned on me like a kick in the head, like, oh, yeah, you got that right too, don't you? So you got to listen. You got to listen and pay attention. And it's obviously rewarding. Sometimes it's frustrating because it comes with combatants, family members and others.
Right.
But I want somebody doing that for me as I'm getting older too.
But by the way, so you mentioned the words our island home. So I'd like to talk about that for a few minutes. I'll make an observation, which I have said at the Salt March in presentation. They said, I'm very interested in this whole so-called dementia-friendly communities movement, this notion of really developing the necessary pieces in a community where, for want of a better way of describing it, no matter how confused I get, I can still live in my hometown with dignity and happy, right? But there may come a point when I'm in my hometown that can't happen when I'm at home, right? That that I just can't be safe there, right? And at some point there may be some folks who need to be in a nursing home, and everybody says, I never want to go to a nursing home, but that's people have got these. Everybody imagines a certain nursing home when they do that. When I go to our island home, I don't feel that. No. It's this. At first, I remember walking in going, "Oh, this is kind of, it's kind of old and beat up and stuff." I said, I don't know," but then I realized there's a totally different feeling there to any other nursing home I've been to.
Sure, there is.
And I think it's a function of size. I think it's a function of the fact that it's town owned. I don't know that necessarily all nursing homes need to be town owned, but that there's maybe a local nonprofit. That the fact that it's local. And the example that I gave to somebody today, that I was talking actually to one of the Gliddens, one of the lawyers, and I said, I've never ever gone to a nursing home where there was a Friends of the Nursing Home group.
I'm on that. Yeah, I know.
Right, pretty amazing.
Pretty
so
amazing.
Can you just talk about, from your perspective, how the island, how a nursing home kind of fits into all of these other things about
nursing homes need to exist. There's no question about it. And Island Homes does a very good job. In fact, my mother was there for the last 4 years of her life. They did a phenomenal job. In fact, she was one of those very same people who said she was born and raised in Nantucket. She said, "You ever think about putting me in the island home and I'll walk into the ocean?" And under my breath, I said, "Well, you can't even walk out the front door. You're
I was
going to
say, which is handy at the island home, since you are close at least."
But when time came that she literally ran out of money, and I propositioned her with this, we got no choice. She went. Yeah. She thrived. So this definitely.
And she thrived.
And she thrived. She knew with people there. They took good care. We learned she could paint. Who would have known? I thought my father was the painter. She painted some beautiful things and got pride. So island home, any nursing home can serve a great purpose. This one, I agree with you, is special. And maybe it's due to the fact that it's town owned. We know about the passion the town had, the whole discussion on the town floor about moving it. I don't think anybody was prepared for how passionate this town was about their nursing home. Right. It isn't some corporation's nursing home. It's our nursing home. And I'm not here to talk about what direction I think, what the best answer is, but
that's a separate question.
That's a separate question altogether, exactly. But there's a passion. They want a good nursing home, wherever it may be. And
implicit in that is you want local control.
Local control. That comes with it, because that gives you the ability to have control. If you don't have local control, ergo you don't have control, and that's not something Nantucket here wants, and I agree with them fully. So that being said, in relation to utilizing nursing home, I've used a couple of examples about not wanting to go to the island home. Some people, if they've got the finances, they can manage private care at home. Great,
and
absolutely. If they want that. If you don't have the finances, I have a relatively simple checklist, because I look at it in two components: your functional component and your cognitive component. Functionally, everybody in this island who's ever been in the hospital has probably heard me say, "Do you know the term ADLs, activities of daily living?" And they say no, and I explain it. Anyway, it's the things we do every day: walking, bathing, toileting, eating, getting dressed. But the top of the list is transferring. You got to be able to get out of the chair or bed by yourself. Because if you can't do that, you're not going to get to walking, toileting, bathing. You got to get up.
You got to be able to get up and get back down and get across the room.
Yep. I use this example sometimes back to the Clinton days when James Carville, his political advisor, said on the blackboard, "It's all about the economy, stupid." Well, I can't tell you how many times I've said it's all about the transfer, stupid. Right. So that's key. If you can do that and then eventually get to walking, even with a walker, being home is an option for you. Absolutely. Okay?
Right.
Cognitively, you got to understand A plus B equals C. Okay, so that's a little bit more of a complicated arena, but one that's very important as well.
Because otherwise it's dangerous.
Otherwise it's dangerous. And I will advocate for what the patient wants. I mean, death, taxes, and what the patient wants, 100% of the time. And I try and reach that, as far as give them the quality of life. 20 years ago, the quality of life was this broad. Now it's this broad, but it's still the same goal. I want to achieve the best quality of life for that person there.
Because everybody just lives today.
Yeah.
And the question is, how good is it going to be today?
Right. How can we make it as good? You take safety. Safety is not the only concern. It's a concern, but it's not the only one. So that being said, I'll advocate for the patient. Sometimes the patient, like my grandmother, said, "I want to go be taken care of." We have a patient right now that's in the hospital that very much looks like they don't want to do it anymore. They don't want to participate,
Right.
And we're making them. And they're complying, but they're basically, without verbally saying it, their actions, "I don't want to do it."
I want to take a rest here.
You got to hear that. and
gotta
respond
hear
to
it.
that. And you can't
You
just
gotta
go
hear
through the
that.
motions. So in terms of the nursing homes here, Sherburne Commons as an assisted living gives us a little bit more advantage. We have
And the fact that it's locally controlled now,
locally controlled
terrific.
again,
Just
tremendous,
terrific.
so nice.
You know, and just the direction that it's moving, even since it's become locally controlled. I'm told it's full.
Yep.
Right. It's terrific.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And the Visiting Nurse Agency, Elder Services, a lot of private organizations to help. I have ammunition to work with,
Right.
which makes my job easier. You know, and the passion of other people as well also make it easier. But it all stems from getting a good game plan, and that's listening to the patient. What do you want? And that's my plan now too. How do we achieve it?
So, from your perspective, as a system,
Yep.
is anything missing, or is there? If you were saying, oh, you know, we're doing a lot of things that are really right, but this could really help. It sounds like all the pieces are there. It sounds like it's systemically.
Most of the pieces,
what is
the
your
pieces
sense?
can be improved just a little bit more. I mean, for instance, free transportation. That's an awesome thing.
Transportation.
A little bit more availability of it, which is going to, a lot of it's going to be funding.
Right.
You know, they do a great job with it as far as that's concerned, but sometimes they're just stretched out. You can't do it. We need a little bit more of that as our elderly population is growing.
Yeah. Over on the other island, actually, that's one of the things that they're really looking at because they were fortunate. There's an entity, and I wonder. I'm really kind of liking that model in terms of the future. That you know, there's an entity. It's public-private. It's called the Center for Living.
Yep.
It evolved from being the entity which was the kind of social the day program for folks who had dementia. Ran out of the senior centers, and now it works so well that we're actually the town's authorized them to buy their own building.
Yep.
And they're going to be running
That's
kind of
great.
right. But they're also looking at extending to other kinds of programs. And interestingly, one of their most important things, you said, is their transportation program.
Transportation's a big part.
I mean, they started with just the medical stuff, you know, getting them to the boat, you know,
Very
when they get
practical
to
stuff.
Falmouth, you know, right.
Right. But there's more than that. Quality of life is more than just taking care of your physical components.
Right.
It's taking care of your emotional components. And we used to have a social day center. I know the numbers weren't big, but it provided a wonderful service for those patients.
Right.
And that's a missing component. I'd love to be able to get maybe even a medical model as well. We have the Salt Marsh Center, and that's wonderful, does a good job. But there's still a number of elders out there who are stuck in their homes and don't have anything to go out to. And socialization, quality of life is an important component. And we don't have that piece. I'd like to see that focused on as well, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think you probably have the players here. It's just a matter of kind of figuring out how you want to get that done.
And making it a priority. You know, I've been ever since helping to start the Human Services Council way back in the 80s. You know, it's been a struggle to get all the players to play together. You know, play in the same sandbox, whether it be in the elderly arena, whether it be a behavioral health arena, whether it be in whatever arena you want to talk about. It's all tough. We have little issues. You know, I don't want it to be about the providers. I want it to be about the patients.
That's right.
And we can probably achieve that.
That's right. As long as everybody keeps the goal in mind, because it's very easy when you're walking into the room to be, you know, you've got your own issue. We're talking about you've got your own issues. At
of
the,
course.
you know,
I got my
you're at the
passions.
hospital.
Sure.
It's a big organization. There's a lot of issues, right? And everybody's got those to bring in.
Right.
But as long as you're focusing on, you know, this is kind of where we're really trying to go.
Yeah.
It'll just keep being good.
And I'd love for the town to be able to participate a little bit more. I mean, it does its thing in terms of providing a little bit of money,
Yeah.
but I feel like we're all chickens fighting for a few seeds. And I think they're not quite recognizing the value of human service, elderly
Yeah.
included, in terms of what finances can do to provide provisions for a
and
lot
what
of
they
the
do.
things. They're doing too little. They got rid of, for all intents and purposes, a lot of the services they provided in the past, including the adult day center.
But you know, interestingly, I'm finding that's true. Once again, I go to a lot
Probably
of
true a lot
communities.
of places, yeah.
But that shift is also true, and I think people are finally responding to the demographic shift,
Yep.
right? Especially at town meeting.
Yep.
That increasingly you've got folks who are the seniors who are going to town meeting with a special warrant article or with something saying, you know, we spend a tremendous amount of our budget, in most communities more than 50%, on the kids.
Yeah.
And we get that. We all have a responsibility.
Yep.
But we also have a responsibility on the other end.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
know.
that a responsibility that communities are starting to wake up to, because because their children aren't there. That others, what we grew up with as what happens with seniors is no longer there.
Yeah.
And suddenly people are starting to recognize that as a community, we need to be watching out for those people.
Absolutely. We are a community, and we can watch out from, and we should.
And you can.
I mean, I'm personally concerned. I've been doing this for a long time, and yes, the retirement issue is certainly on the table. Exactly when, even I don't know, apparently. But
1 year from some point.
1 year, yeah, sometime before the end of
A
next
year
year, I
and
think
a-
is my latest comment. But in any case, I'm concerned when I leave. I'll be honest with you. The town does support the hospital for the work that I do. My 2 healthcare advocates, my staff does in terms of we have an open door. I got people coming in asking for babysitting help, people long-term planning, crisis. I got people coming in for everything. And I don't, it's not that I mind it, but I can't guarantee that my successor is going to be as adapted, as motivated to do that. So if the hospital social work department doesn't continue in the same sense, which I hope it does, where is those services going to be provided? Who's going to pick it up?
Right, and that has to be a function of a commitment by that broader hospital board, by the community, by a whole set of, and by the town.
By a lot of players.
That's right.
I mean, I can't guarantee the hospital has been kind enough to continue to recognize that. It's a win-win. We all benefit from it. But it's still going beyond the normal parameters of what a normal social work department would do.
Right, but it's also a really sensible place for it to be located.
Yep.
Even if it were located there with support from some other players, it's the right place for it to be located.
Yep.
Well, listen, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I know I've been trying to get you on the show, but you're really, really busy. And I think this just gives people a sense, if they didn't know it already, of kind of what the possibilities are. And I appreciate your observation. I wanted to catch you before retirement, which I knew was within the next 10 years. So,
You'll probably be able to do that a few more times.
so, Peter, thank you very much
My
for coming
pleasure.
on.
My pleasure.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you as always.
Thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next installment of Bergeron Briefs. Thank you.